Hi students. I wanted to go over the study guide for the Edgar Allan Poe stories, The Cask of Amontillado and The Fall of the House of Usher. I'm not going to read over a biography of Edgar Allan Poe in the video because you guys had that really good video about the mystery of Edgar Allan Poe, so that went over, his story. So I'm going to just kind of go over and clarify the questions as needed. So it says the Cask of Amontillado is known as a tale of what? So what am I looking here for? I'm really looking for, like, it's a tale of what? I'm just going to go ahead and say that I'm looking for, it's a tale of revenge, which is something that makes it, I think, rather compelling. We don't know why um, Montresor wants to get revenge, right? But because that part isn't given to us, we have the thousand injuries, but we don't know if that's accurate or not, or. But revenge is it. So what? But you do need evidence from the text. So what is your evidence that's a tale of revenge? I'm going to leave that to you. I just said it. I said one part of it. So I'll leave that to you too, but you do need evidence. If you have another idea about what kind of a tale it is, I'm very open to accepting that, but it needs to, again, you just need to provide that evidence from the text. All right, so number two, in what way does Montresor use Fortunato's character flaws against, it should be against, not again, typo, against him in the Cask of Amontillado? In what way does he use his flaws against him? So you'd have to know what his flaws are. So he has some character flaws, Fortunato, and Montresor uses that against him. So, look for what you think his flaws are and describe how he uses that against him. I'm not going to hand that to you. Just go back to the story and look if you're not sure right now. Number three, in what way is the house a character in the fall of the House of Usher? So the house is described in many ways like an actual character, and that is throughout the story, right from the beginning throughout. So I don't need every instance that it's described as a character, but I do need one at least. So one specific way that the house is like a character. So you should be able to describe specifically from the story how it is described as a character. All right. So explain how the fact that Roderick and Madeline are twins is significant to the story, The Fall of the House of Usher. So you need to discuss this idea of them being twins. How is the idea of their being twins? How does that connect with the story? Discuss that very specifically, and again, provide evidence from the story, and it's there. All right, number five. Both stories, The Cask of Amontillado and The Fall of the House of Usher, deal with themes of people being buried alive. Reflecting on the movie, that here's the one time you get to discuss the movie in the quiz. How about that? The mystery of Edgar Allan Poe, what in Poe's life might have contributed to his focus on that theme? So thinking about the movie, there's a lot of different ways to go with this. I think one way is just that how buried under problems he was throughout his life, right? I mean, maybe if you're burdened and buried under all those problems, maybe that's sort of a cathartic way to perhaps deal with that way that you feel, But there are other ways that there are some definitely scholarly ideas on this. There are some ideas that people have about this, and any of your original ideas could be very compelling here. You do need evidence for them, though. So you would need evidence. So, for example, both stories, The Cask of Amontillado and The Fall of the House of Usher, and repeat this for a reason, deal with themes of people being buried alive. So what you do is you need to give this idea. If I gave my idea about the idea that he was in his own life buried under problems, I would then need to give an example from the movie about how he was buried under problems, some of those problems he was buried under, and I need a specific instance in one of the stories that shows that connection between the two of the person being buried alive. Okay, so you need both in this. You need the evidence from the film and you need the evidence from at least one of the stories. Okay? All right, so number 6, what instances of foreshadowing do you see in each of these stories? Foreshadowing meaning that there are clues to the end in the story. There are hints, there are clues. And sometimes you don't find that until you go back and read it again. So if you didn't see any little hints to how it's going to end, go back and look for them now if you haven't already. Number 7. Why do you think that the narrator in The Fall of the House of Usher has no name? What do you think? We've dealt with other characters that were not specifically named, such as in the yellow wallpaper, right? The protagonist, we're not informed of her name. So here we go again with that idea, right? The boss in Bartleby the Scrivener, we were never given his name. So we're not given the name of the narrator. Why do you think that? And then give your idea and give evidence from the text, all right? And so number 8, how reliable is the narrator in the Cask of Amontillado? Reliable meaning, do you trust his assessment of things? Do you trust his word? Do you trust when he says that there were 1,000 injuries? You could say, no, I don't trust that because this seems like an extreme reaction to go and get this guy that supposedly gave him these 1,000 injuries and bury him alive in this really cruel, honestly, and methodical undertaking of revenge. So you could say clearly that is not sane, so I'm not trusting that narrator. Or you could say, yes, I do trust him. Just because it's not laid out what the 1,000 injuries were, it didn't mean that it didn't happen. You know, that he's taken justice into his own hands, so to speak. So that is your decision, but you do need to support it with evidence from the story. All right? So number 9, discuss the significance of the name Fortunato in the Cask of Amontillado. So poor Fortunato, right? Think about that. Think about his name. Think about, is Fortunato very fortunate, right? I mean, so think about that and discuss with evidence, all right? 10, discuss the significance of setting to each of these stories. So the setting in the Cask of Amontillado, right? I mean, they're in this like, sort of like a wine cave thing, right? I mean, like it's like in the basement of the house, and it was like this crypt where this was actually common, I guess, apparently at the time, that the family members would have folks buried, family members, dead family members, in these burial things, like in the wall and underground, and it's a little creepy, right? But at any rate, it adds to the creepiness of the story. But it was not an uncommon way of doing things at that time. So, but anyway, we've got the setting, right? And we've got, them going further and further into this. I don't know about you, but when I first read this story, I was like, really like, no, Fortunato, go back, go back. Years ago, when Oprah had her regular show, there was she had this expert on, and she would refer to this guy. He was a police officer of some sort, and she would refer to him often throughout other episodes, where he was saying that if someone for some reason took you hostage, kidnapped you, something horrible like that, right? That never go with them to the second location. Never go with them to the second location. Like if you're gonna kill me, if you're gonna shoot me, do it here in broad daylight where there are witnesses, where there's some chance of me getting away, or where there's somebody's gonna see it and call somebody or whatever. Because the second location is never going to be good. It's going to be remote. There's going to be nobody there, right? And so there's a word to the wise, right? There's a little helpful tip from Oprah and the police officer, which I certainly don't remember his name. It was like 25 years ago. But at any rate, this is what I was thinking during this when I first read the story. I'm like, no, do not go with him. Do not go to the second location, Fortunato. So all of that is to say setting, right? It was the second location. It was creepier, right? They weren't at the fair anymore like they were the carnival, right? They weren't out in the open anymore, right? He took them to the second location. Not a good thing. Okay, and then the house, right? The creepy house, right? So the fall of the House of Usher, everything's kind of falling apart and creepy. How does the house, going back to this idea of the house as a character, the description of the house, how does that setting like affect the whole story, right? So kind of really think specifically about that. All right, so those are the questions I want to go over, clarify, kind of discuss with you in this format we're doing right now. And here's a word to the wise. This is a word to the wise, so just kind of bear with me and listen to this. Your quiz answers need to be your original wording. From you. You have wonderful ideas. If you've read the story, you have ideas about the story. I am just looking for you to answer the question correctly, and I'm looking for evidence from the story in every case. You should never, ever, never, ever consult sources during the quiz. I don't currently use that lockdown browser. I certainly could, I suppose, in the future. But just do not do it. It will be bad. It will not be good for you or anyone else. So don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. So that is a word to the wise. It is I'm not on quizzes. I do not count off for sentence structure. I do not count off for, I'm not looking for topic sentences or anything like this on the quiz. But I am looking for you to answer the question. Really helps if it's in complete sentences. It's more clear that way. But answer the question and explain it so I know exactly what you mean, right? And give me evidence from the text. The evidence proves it. If I don't have a quote, or I don't have your description or your example, your little story about the story, right? I don't have evidence. There's nothing to prove it. It's just kind of like vague, la la la, like a so, so at any rate, that's my silly way of saying, your original wording, right? Number one, very, very important. Plagiarism gets you a 0. That's not good, and could bring you a host of other problems that nobody needs to deal with, right? So most of all, I don't want you to have to deal with them, and I don't want to deal with them. So just avoid that, right? So number one, your original words. Do not consult any sources during the quiz. Never, ever, ever. Secondly, though, do answer the question at hand. Sometimes we get a little on a side street or something. Answer that question. If there are more parts to the question, answer all the parts. Evidence, evidence, evidence. If you were in a court of law and you said, for some odd reason, the question was, how reliable is the narrator in the Cask of Amontillado? You said, not so reliable. Would the judge really go by what you said? No, he would ask, either one, would ask for evidence, 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 right? So you've got to prove it. So prove to me your great ideas. All right, that said, thanks so much for reviewing the stories with me.